approve the thanks, Ann. With that, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 13th, 2020.
Second.
All right, any further discussion, board members? No? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Hey,
Okay. We have no old business on our agenda for today. We have new business. We will move the appointment of board members to a future meeting as we have all members present at. So we'll skip over the item A under new business and we'll move right into item B. We have 3 variance requests come to us today. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to staff to walk us through the variance request. So Anne, I'm going to hand it over to you. And if you will walk us through file 21-06, McClain variance request for 114 East 13th Street.
Thank you, Kayla. I also wanted to just kind of give a quick overview of the variance process since Larry has joined our board. I just thought it'd be good to kind of recap that the granting of any variance in essence does damage to the zoning code, and careful consideration needs to be placed on the evidence present within the individual application to determine if the criteria have been met and proper findings can be asserted. It's on the burden of the applicant to demonstrate there are special circumstances peculiar to the subject that prevent them from being able to meet the zoning district requirements, and should zoning be imposed, an undue hardship would result. All the files that we're going to talk about today have a common thread to them. We are looking at addressing each of these applications with platted lots that existed prior to zoning. Zoning was adopted in 1972. All of these parcels and lots were platted previous to that. So zoning came in 1972 and imposed dimensional standards to, in some areas, existing situations that don't always really actually make opportunities by today's dimensional standards that simply work. And so within each of these applications, I'm really going to talk about how these are unique individual circumstances that imposing zoning on them could potentially result in a hardship. And that is really the criteria. There is merit within all 3 of these applications of some outstanding merit. Mr. McClain talks within his application about a desire and a commitment to trying to bring affordable housing stock, attainable housing stock to Lake County. That is absolutely commendable, and I applaud him deeply for that. Although, as we look at variances, that's really not the basis of why we would grant a variance. We really have to look at each individual situation. Also, variances cannot be granted for things such as uses. If your zone district doesn't allow a certain use, you cannot seek a variance from the Board of Adjustment for a use beyond what is allowed within the zoning. Variances are limited to dimensional standards. So with that, I will be happy to introduce file number 2106, the McClain variance request. I would just ask that if it's all right, I would like to go ahead and unless I hear any objection, I would like to talk about both of Mr. McClain's files, 2106 and 2107. They are inherently similar in the findings as evident in the staff report. So these are,
may I ask a question? Do we know when they purchased the property as opposed to when the zoning went in? I mean, did they go into these with their eyes wide open, knowing that the zoning was in place on the properties they were procuring?
Certainly the zoning was in place. For these 2 particular applications, this is a redevelopment of these lots. There are structures existing on them today with the intent of repurposing these lots because the structures, and I will let Mr. McClain speak a little more to that, but I would suggest that this is a repurposing of previously developed land. And yes, that, that is a fair question, Larry, that, but I do also think that we might be able to provide some data and some information that would suggest if the zoning was applied to these areas, we might end up in a situation where we would have a less than a desirable outcome for what could be built on them. But very absolutely, to answer your question more directly, yes, the zoning is the same at the time of purchase as it is at the time of hearing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So on these two parcels, they were created in the 1800s. It's just a night of, I apologize, let me turn that off. These parcels were created in the 1800s as part of the Cooper subdivision. And each of these lots are 2,625 square feet, which is roughly a third of what the minimum, if you were to create new lots now within this zone district, if you're looking at proportional differences, they would be about a third of what the minimum lot size is allowed within the urban residential zone district of which these applications are for.
And they're adjacent lots?
Yes, they are adjacent lots. Yes, and I'm actually, let me, I had it ready. Let me screen share that. Excuse me, this is 114 East 13, and 116 is immediately adjacent to the east. Or excuse me, the west. I'm sorry, Dick, you would have caught me on that. So this is a site plan designed on what Dick would like to do on these lots. He would like to demo the existing uses that exist today and bring in modular single-family homes with a dimensional standard or dimensionals that are given within the site plan of 15 feet 2 inches by 50 feet, resulting in a diminished setback on each side. Mr. McClain has taken into account a fire separation. He's taken into consideration these are just peripheral codes, not really within the variance, but they're good peripheral information. You need a minimum of 5 feet between residents, between the adjacent property and the subject property, in order not to have to do fire rated construction. So on both sides, the application for the adjacent property on the other side would result in 9 feet 10 inches, I believe, between the structures. And with the existing structures that exist now, with the 5 feet 10 inches existing or being proposed on the east side, he will gain that adequate fire separation between uses. If we were to impose the district setbacks of 10 feet on either side, that would result in a 5-foot building envelope, which does not really result in a practical application of a building envelope on this parcel. And so based on that, we would say that there is a unique situation here, as evidenced in the staff report when I did a screenshot of the GIS to demonstrate what the surrounding properties look like and where they're built. Many of them, the vast majority of them, do not meet setback requirements. In fact, this will actually most likely be an improvement from setbacks within this block of the Cooper subdivision. And yes.
Oh, so it's in keeping kind of with what's already in place, even though those were probably built prior to the zoning.
Some of them have been built prior, some of them have been done in later years with my research, but some of them, as you can see, evidenced are directly on the property lines. And some of them, so I would
overlap the property lines.
overlap the property lines. And so yes, there is absolutely room for improvement, especially in respect to fire safety. That's absolutely one aspect that needed to be taken into account in considering granting this variance, is that we make sure that either fire separation has been adequately mitigated, or that Mr. McClain would contemplate fire rated resistive construction. And so he's very cognizant of that within his application. And so the design does take into account that.
And if they're modular, there's not much chance of having them built with fire resistant construction.
I do believe that you could probably do an upgrade. We've seen them have to go into the manufacturer and ask for that. But yes, there is obviously a cost savings in not having to do that. So based on
the purpose of these are low income housing or affordable housing.
I will let the applicant, kind of speak.
That, sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And again, like I said, kind of at the beginning, really, kind of that is kind of a peripheral piece of information. The criteria outlined within the staff,
right. Yeah.
Is basically where we land on that. Okay. So staff has provided a recommendation of approval based on the fact that if the strict application of the code was and the setbacks were imposed on each of these individual lots, and they are inherently the same request, it's just that the setback modifies per site plan, that it would result in an undesirable outcome, resulting in a hardship of really making these lots not buildable by today's standards with a housing stock that is practical. And so that's the basis of the recommendation from staff. And love to take any additional questions there if you have any more, or Kayla or Mark if you have any of staff. Otherwise, I would like to introduce Mr. McClain and let him answer any questions you might have, and also share anything that I might have missed.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
I don't have any questions at this point. And Mark, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Great. Well, I would love to then introduce Dick McClain. He is the property owner of 114 East 13th and 116 East 13th, and he can share with the board the considerations that he would like to provide to the application.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Anne, for the work that you have done on this. I think you've stated the basis for my application pretty well, so I really don't have anything to add to that. I would say regarding, Larry, regarding the ability of a modular home to have to be adjusted for fire safety. We put in a modular a couple of years ago on the corner of Pine and Chestnut. The adjacent property was built right on the property line, so we only had barely 5 feet between them, and we were able to do that and work that out with the manufacturer as well as the fire department. So that was able to be done. But in this case, our plan for those two lots would have more than abundant separation between all the structures, so that fire code issues would not come into play. I would simply observe that if you look at the surrounding homes, I think there'd be general agreement that putting in a couple modulars there would indeed be an improvement in the area. And you've already spoken of the fact that the motivation of trying to provide a more affordable housing is not really within the purview of, that's not an issue that this committee takes into account. So I don't really need to speak to that. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Sorry, I was on mute. So as modulars, they don't really look like trailers, do they?
No, they don't. No, it's actually modular home is built to exactly the same state and federal codes as a stick-built home, in contrast to like a park model, which is a trailer.
Okay.
So if you look at for example, the homes up on East 6th Street, the 2-story homes up there,
Right.
they're modular homes.
Right.
What Kyle is putting in, yeah.
Yeah, those don't look bad. Are these 2-story?
They would be 2-story. That's our intent.
You said it's the same person that's building these that you placed on that lot down there on Chestnut, right? Same model?
That's our intent. Yeah, I mean, we're not that far along with it yet, but we had a very good experience with them. And so my expectation is that we would work with the same company.
Gotcha. And the width of these homes, 15 feet? Is that, am I looking at it right?
Yeah, I think I think it's 15.4. Those are standard for modulars, and they're really defined by what you can haul down a highway. So that's really what sets the width of a modular home, or at least of one part of one.
Okay. And you went 4 feet on either side of your site or your lot lines in between the modulars, and you went 5'10" from your modulars to the neighbors. And
I think it's the other way around. Yeah,
Well,
I
that's what I
had
was-
more space between the two modulars because the neighbors' properties are more than 5 feet away from the property line. So by putting it a little bit towards the, in the case of 114 to the west side, you still would have ample distance between it and the property and the home on 112. And the same thing for the 116 lot. So it would just make sure it would result in there being about 11 feet between the two modulars, which is more than adequate for fire safety.
Gotcha. And I know Ann said this, but the home on 118 and the modular proposed at 116, what is that? Because Ann said it, I think. Because it's 4 foot from.
I'm sorry, what was the question, Mark?
After the placement of your modular on 116.
Okay.
How far is that wall from the neighbor's wall on at address 1?
I don't have that measurement here, but I checked it before. But the neighbor's home is more than 5. It's 7 or 8 feet at least from the property line. So you would have again in excess of a 10-foot separation between the modular we're proposing to put up and the home that's located at 118.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I had these numbers kind of written on the paper wrong. That's why I got those
No,
confused.
that's a good question, Mark. Thank you.
Dick, so I just wanted to confirm if you'll see in the recommendation suggested motion and under the recommendation, I have that 114 East 13th would be seeking a westerly setback of 4 feet and an easterly setback of 5 feet 10 inches. Is that one correct? And then
Correct.
116 would be looking for a westerly setback of 5 feet 10 inches and an easterly setback of 4 feet.
Yeah,
That's correct.
I just had that in my mind. So that's what you put is right.
Is your intent to put solar on these?
I'm sorry?
Do you have an intention to put solar on these? I was looking at bullet G.
No.
Here. Okay.
Thank you.
Say,
Mr. McClain. this point, do any of the board members have any additional questions to the applicant or to staff on the application?
I have a question to staff.
Sure.
What concerns are there about setting a precedent that approval of this would enact? Anne had mentioned something that there might be a concern about setting a precedent by approving a variance for the zoning district.
So, there is a concern, in certain land use procedures and processes to consider setting a precedent. But the application of a variance is looked at on an individual basis. And so it is available to any individual that can come in and show a unique situation. We may find that same situation on another lot within a subdivision. And sometimes the granting of a variance is a hardship due to the strict imposing of the code. And so that can be the hardship. So precedent is something that we absolutely spend a little more time being concerned about within conditional use permits or some other processes. But variances by nature are individual enough, and we have to look at the evidence within each application, that we don't typically concern ourselves so much with a precedent, because the code affords us the ability to look at each individual application and the evidence within that application uniquely.
Okay. And what's the implications to the project if the variance is not granted?
So if the variance isn't granted, so that's what we look at. That's absolutely the finding. What would result if the variance isn't granted? And what this would do would make the property owner have to look at constructing in a building envelope of 5 feet in width, and then a generous length, but it's not necessarily a practical reality, and it could result in probably a situation where the property owner may not be able to find a buildable solution.
Okay. So is that the case, Dick, that you don't really have a buildable solution without a variance?
Yeah, there is no solution on individual lots because there's really not anything you can build that's only 5 feet wide. And so if this were not granted, I'd have to apply for, even if I consolidated the lots, there would be no setback issues if that were done, but it still would be less than the minimum lot size given the
6,000
zoning.
feet. Yeah.
And so that would also require a variance. So I mean, if one variance or another is not granted, then you have 2 lots that will sit there, then nothing can be done with them because there's not enough room to build on them.
So you've kind of thought this through, I assume.
Well, yeah, and I had prior discussions with Paul because our original thought was maybe we could try to rehab the little home that was there, but it actually sits right on the property line. So it's another whole set of issues with that. And so my impression early on when we purchased the property was that there probably was not going to be an issue with putting 2 modulars on. If I had thought that there was, yeah, we probably would not have purchased the property.
It does seem like a better solution to put the modules in and to rehab that other one sitting right on the line.
Yeah.
But also code won't, that would be a non-conforming use. And so you can allow non-conforming uses to continue in perpetuity as long as you don't increase the degree of non-conformity. So, rehabbing a non-conforming structure is kind of a slippery slope because you absolutely have to keep the same footprint. And so, it does limit your ability to sometimes effectively rehab a structure. So sometimes it's really difficult to do those kind of rehabilitation projects.
It could expand as long as it didn't extend closer to the borders, right?
Right. Well, and if you're sitting on the property line, it's pretty hard not to say that an increase in size is not increasing the degree of nonconformity.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Markham. I appreciate that. Thank you, staff. And Mr. McClain, at this point, at 4:52 p.m., I would like to open the public hearing. Do we have anyone from the public with us today that would like to comment on the application for Mr. McClain? Okay, Melissa, are you here to comment on the McClain application?
No, I am not.
Okay. All right. So with that, I don't have anyone here to make any public comment on the application for Mr. McClain. And so we will close the public hearing today at 4:53 p.m. And has staff received any correspondence regarding this application that needs to be read into the record at this time?
No, we did not receive anything from the notices that went out either for nor against the application. We actually had 2 inquiries who just, we shared the file online for the public. We directed them to where the information was, and that satisfied their curiosities. And so we didn't receive any other feedback.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, I feel like we have gone through the application and have vetted the application. And with that, I will read into the record a suggested motion for approval. I move the Board of Adjustment approve the setback variance for the following files: 21-06, McClain variance 114 East 13th, allowing a westerly setback of 4 feet and an easterly setback of 5 feet 10 inches, and for 21-07, McClain variance 116 East 13th, allowing a westerly setback of 5 feet 10 inches and an easterly setback of 4 feet. And further finding that the requested variance is consistent with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan and the purposes set out in section 1.4 of this code. There are special circumstances or conditions such as exceptional topographic conditions, narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property that are peculiar to the land or building for which the variance is sought that do not apply generally to the land or buildings in the area. The special circumstances and conditions that account for the need for a variance are not the result of the owner's actions. The special circumstances and conditions are such that the strict application of provisions of this code would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional and undue hardship upon, the owner of such a property. The granting of the variance is the minimum necessary to relieve the applicant of the practical difficulties to or exceptional and undue hardship in the use of land or building, and the granting of the variance will not have any adverse impact upon the properties located within the written notification area defined in section 3.1.7. In determining whether difficulties to or hardship upon the owner of a lot, parcel, or property exists, the Board of Adjustment shall properly consider the adequacy of access to sunlight for solar energy devices installed on or after January 1st, 1980.
You looking for a second?
Yes, please.
Sure. A second.
Okay. All right, and so Marcella made a motion. It was seconded by Markham. And is there any further discussion regarding the motion on the floor from the board members?
Good luck, Dick.
All right. So seeing no further discussion, I will do a roll call vote. Board of Adjustment member Markham.
Yes.
Board of Adjustment member Wadsworth.
Approve.
All right, and Board of Adjustment member Marcella, approve. All right, so with that, Mr. McClain, staff will work with you on your next steps for that recording of that variance and how to move forward. Thank you for your patience with us today as we worked through getting our members here. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So with that, we'll move into the next item on our agenda today. And that item is file 21-08. Everett Variance Request, Lot 3A, Block 2, Centennial Heights. And so for this variance application, we have Ms. Sydney Everett with us today. And I'm going to ask staff to begin by walking us through the variance application. Then we will ask the applicant to add any additional information, then open the public hearing. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to staff. If you'd like to share your screen and walk us through any information on the staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Marcella. So I kind of intentionally started with the McClain variance, just so that we could talk about how the effect of zoning came in and was applied in certain areas of the county. And now as we look to administer zoning all of this time later, how we have practical difficulties in doing that at times. And Centennial Heights is, we just looked at a situation where the minimum lot size is about 3 times larger than what was originally platted there. When we look at Centennial Heights, we're looking at a subdivision that is about 10 times less a lot than what the minimum lot size is. Sydney, Miss Everett has consolidated 2 lots, resulting in 0.44 of an acre. The minimum lot size that her property lies in is ag forestry, and that minimum lot size is 5 acres. So even with combining 2 lots to try to increase her building envelope, the setbacks that the zone district calls for is 50 feet from the edge of the street, 25 feet on the sides and rear of the lot. And again, it's a minimum of 5 acres. Centennial Heights is an area that we have routinely looked at variance requests from. I would even go so far as to say this is a situation where the zoning that was imposed in this area was a mistake. And if we had the bandwidth, this is an area that staff would probably very much like to look at having its own zoning, because the adjacent parcels around here are large 35, 40 acre parcels. And this subdivision is unique where it's located. And by today's planning standards, this would result in a planned unit development style of subdivision. But that was not the practice in the 60s prior to zoning when these lots were created. And I don't think, I have to say that the property owners come in to apply in this area and are very, very surprised, and to your point, Larry, should there have been an awareness at the time of purchase that the zoning might be problematic? Well, when you look in the neighborhood and you see that there's built structures, I think that a property owner assumes that that reasonable setbacks are present. However, I would say there was a time within my department that zoning wasn't mainly the focus. It was more on the building side of doing a review for building applications. So in recent times, zoning has been overseen and administered more efficiently and effectively. And so it was a discovery that the planning official, Paul Clarkson, and myself discovered when we joined the county that this subdivision was very out of dimensional standards to the zone district that it lies within. And it would be great if someday this area had its own planned unit development, which allows for a hybrid zoning. Basically, a planned unit development comes in and it goes through a process to be able to create its own zoning. Ag forestry is absolutely appropriate for all of the surrounding area to Centennial Heights, but Centennial Heights itself struggles with these zone districts. And so I just kind of want to give a little history. I believe our caller, Melissa, that's joining us today, her husband and her also went through this variance process with myself when they went to pull a building permit on their property. And I think that it was a surprise to them. And so I would just bring it to everyone's attention that best practices haven't always been previous years to consider zoning. So some structures were built in Centennial Heights previously that didn't take into account what the actual zone district required setbacks are. So I think purchasing in this area, I think that there are surprises at times to property owners that the setbacks are what they are. So all of that being said, this application, Sydney has consolidated 2 lots, resulting in almost a half an acre. These additionally, another practice now, we amended code, you cannot place well and septic on any newly created parcels less than 2.5 acres. You need separation between well and septic of 100 feet. And you need to have the ability to have an alternative location for a failed septic or a leach field. So again, moving forward and looking at best practices and best land use practices moving forward, code now wouldn't allow these this size of lots to be created. But alas, we are presently must administer and work the best we can with subdivisions that were created prior to this time. So this variance request, staff very much would recommend approval of, because we believe that based on kind of the history that I've provided, the zoning in this area is simply a mistake. And if the strict application of it was imposed, it would be very difficult to put in infrastructure with adequate separation and potential for down the line leach field failure and to position your home. And as Sydney has here on her site plan, this only demonstrates a house. You know, it should be a reasonable expectation to be able to have a garage as well as if you would, if someone would be so inclined. So staff suggests that the hardship is that without a reduction in the setbacks, a property owner is not able to realize a realistic expectation of being able to put a single family home and align their infrastructure properly, their well and septic. We also want to be considerate of environmental impact. So with that, there is 2 recommendations. One is a motion for approval with the distances recommended by staff. There is a little bit of leeway. You will see that the site plan shows 36 feet, 9 1/8 inch setback from the edge of the road. And I think it's 12. Sometimes this plan is a little busy. It takes me a minute to find the setbacks on it. I believe it's a 12-foot setback. Because the engineering, I don't believe, is completed with Ms. Everett's building permit, I would encourage you to give her a little bit of leeway of a 30-foot setback and a 10-foot westerly setback to ensure that when her final septic design is done, she has adequate space.
Do we have a plat of the hood to see how it kind of fits in comparison to what's already extant?
Do we have a view of the neighborhood? Is that what you said, Larry?
Yeah, a plat that shows the other lots around there.
I can do a couple different things. I can go in the GIS and look at that area.
I mean, it'd just be interesting. If everything around it's 5 acres and there's this one little piece sitting there, it would be different than if there were a dozen of them like this.
So that is the case. Centennial Heights was platted at just under 1/4 of an acre lots. The lots in Centennial Heights are 0.22 of an acre, the whole subdivision.
Yeah, so I'm counting 23 sites out there. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 homes. Of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them have had to go through this process. That way I'm thinking, right? There's the 9 homes that are out there that are built are not, they would be in violation of setbacks if they followed the zoning to a T.
So we're not setting any precedent here.
No,
Well,
in fact, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I'm just telling you, we've been down this road before with this subdivision. It's common, and if people are going to build on any of these lots, a variance is going to have to occur.
That puts some perspective around it. Thanks, Mark.
You bet.
I think Melissa was asking to see the plat again, or the site plan rather.
Yes, I can screen share the site plan again.
Do you know where this subdivision is, Larry?
No, I don't, Mark.
If you go down Half Moon Road.
Oh, okay.
Instead of going up Half Moon, go straight towards the gravel pit. It's that subdivision out there by itself, kind of, with some modular homes on them.
Right.
Yeah, that's this subdivision.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a nice place for nice views for a house.
Okay, with that, and I don't know if you saw in the chat, Melissa Kerr asked to see the site plan one more time. If you could share your. Okay, Melissa, you should be able to see the site plan one more time. And can you maybe just walk us through on the site plan one more time what the proposed setback encompasses there?
Sure. So you'll see, this is, I have to say, I look at these things all the time, and this has got a lot of information on it. So here's the house. Here's the well. This is the proposed leach field. This is the proposed septic tank. So here is the edge of the gravel road, Stargazer Circle. Here's the edge of the road. So we're measuring setback from here to here. That amounts right here of 36 feet, 9 1/4 inches. And then this is right here is the property line. So, and I should do this line right here is the property line that goes like this. So from this property line right here, there's a measurement right here of 12 feet on the side.
Okay.
Okay, so that's hopefully that kind of, there's a lot on this site plan. Hopefully that kind of gave you, this is a propane tank right here. Give you a little bit of idea. The distance from the well to the septic tank has to be a minimum of 100 feet. This indicates 106 feet 1 inch.
Okay.
So
All right.
that 100 feet, is that to the leach field? Isn't
From the
that
well,
tank on the left there, and then the 100 feet, does that rectangle represent the leach field?
yes, this represents the leach field. This
Okay.
represents the septic tank, and this is the well up here.
And then you had said something about room for an alternate.
So
Tell me about
that's
that.
probably why there's this additional 6 feet in here, because I would think that they're contemplating. And again, you know, on a lot this size, you're going to do the best that you can if that were to occur, and to make sure that you have those proper separations. Our best practice and our planning standard now, when we went in and redid code, is we no longer allow any new lots to be subdivided in Lake County less than 2.5 acres if they're serviced by well and septic, because there is becoming problems communicated to us by public health of very, very small lots that were developed years and years ago prior to subdivision regulations, where septic systems have failed and there's no room for a new leach field. So moving forward, we have amended code that we will no longer allow any lots less than 2.5 acres moving forward. But currently we have lots of lots that exist in Lake County that are smaller than that have well and septic. Just moving forward, we want to be better in our planning practices.
So for existing lots, they all need to go through this process.
If they end up in, sometimes those variances come from public health, and setback variances are something that zoning allows for, but we do vertical construction. Public health does variances for infrastructure.
Yep. And does this also meet the setback for well and septic from neighboring parcels?
So that has been contemplated, I believe, that will be done in the final septic permit analysis.
Okay.
But that, when I talked to Glenn, who did the site plan for Sydney, he assured me that had been part of the contemplation and putting in the well.
Okay, cool.
Are there existing neighbors around?
Yes.
Okay.
With that, I think let's move to see if the applicant has any information to present to us now that staff has presented. Ms. Everett, do you have any additional information that you'd like to share with us on your application for a variance?
I honestly think Anne and all you guys kind of covered it all. I just wanted to say, yeah, if it didn't get approved, it would kind of be a hardship on me, just because, I mean, out here at Centennial Heights, there's not a lot of wiggle room as far as, the lots and stuff like that. And then again, this is going to be my residential, primary home. I was born and raised in Leadville, Colorado, and that's probably where I'm staying. So I don't want you guys thinking it's going to be like a second home or anything. This is definitely going to be where I chose to live. That being said, if I did know going into this that the variance could be denied and stuff like that, I probably would have looked at other property. But, you know, seeing that my mom lives out here also, it kind of made things a lot easier. Granted, when she bought her house out here, it was already built and stuff, so she didn't have to go through this process. But I think future reference, whoever sells the lots probably should tell people what's going on. But with that
Yeah.
being said, I want to thank you guys for your time and consideration. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Thank you, Miss Everett. I do appreciate that. Board members, though, any of you have any questions for Miss Everett at this time?
Nope.
All right.
Yeah, Ann covered it really well.
All right, great. So at this time at 5:17 p.m., now that we have had a presentation from both the applicant and staff, that I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing at this point. And I believe that we only have one member of the public with us, Melissa Kerr. So Melissa, if you would like to make a public comment at this time, you are welcome to do so.
Thanks, Kayla. Melissa Keir. I was not planning on saying anything, but down the line of what Ann shared, it is pretty hard out here for the residents to, you know, to get over these variances. And I think we may have been the first family that needed to go through it when we put in our garage. So I support Sydney's plan that I see here. And I think it's in a great spot since she's got the double lots there. It does get a little tricky on those inside lots in Centennial Heights. So I'm sure as more variances come to you, there'll be more questions about the distance between wells and septics especially. So just to share that with you all as other people decide to build on these lots. But yeah, I support what Sydney's doing, and that's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate it. I do not see at this point any other members of the public with us today. And so at this point, I will close the public hearing at 5:19 p.m. Anne, did staff receive any additional correspondence in regards to this file, either for or against the proposed variance?
No, we actually didn't even receive inquiries as to the application. As Melissa indicated, I think they were the first, but I think we've processed a couple since then. And honestly, I think that the neighbors have become aware of these variances. And like Melissa, I think when we had their hearing, we had a lot of concerned neighbors attend that. And it was kind of an information sharing opportunity. And since then, it seems as though the adjacent property owners are all supportive of one another.
Oops. All right. So with that, I am going to read into the record the suggested motion to approve. I move the Board of Adjustment to approve the setback variance file number 21-08, Everett variance, and allow the minimum street setback to be 30 feet and the minimum westerly setback, side setback to be 10 feet. And further finding that A, the requested variance is consistent with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan and the purposes set out in section 1.4 of this code. B, there are special circumstances or conditions, such as exceptional topographic conditions, narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property that are peculiar to the land or building for which the variance is sought, that do not apply generally to land or buildings within the area. C, the special circumstances and conditions that account for the need for a variance are not the result of the owner's actions. D, the special circumstances and conditions are such that the strict application of provisions of this code would result in a peculiar and exceptional and practical difficulty to an exceptional and undue hardship upon the owner of such property. E, the granting of the variance is the minimum necessary to relieve the applicant of the practical difficulties to or exceptional and undue hardship in the use of the land or building, and the granting of the variance will not have an adverse impact upon the properties located within the written notification area as defined in section 3.1.7. And G, in determining whether difficulties to or hardship upon the owner of a lot, parcel, or other property exists, the Board of Adjustment shall properly consider the adequacy of access to sunlight for solar energy devices installed on or after January 1st, 1980.
I won't repeat it, but I'll second it.
Thank you. So Anne, we have a motion on the floor from Marcella and a second from Mr. Markham. Board members, is there any further discussion on this application for a variance?
No, thanks.
All right. So seeing none, I will do a roll call vote. Board member Markham,
Yes, approve.
board member Wadsworth.
Vote to approve.
All right, and Marcella votes to approve. So with that, we will complete the variance process for Everett in Centennial Heights. Miss Everett, you can work with staff on your next steps and properly recording the variance on your property record.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Everett, and thank you for your patience with us today as we rounded up our board members. We sure do appreciate your time.
Enjoy your new home.
Yeah. So with that, board members, is there any further discussion that we need to talk about tonight before we adjourn?
I have nothing.
All right.
Good.
Okay. And so with that, thank you, board members, for participating today, and we will adjourn this afternoon at 5:23 p.m. Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
That's all. Bye-bye.
Thanks.